Welcome back. I'm Barry Craig. We continue today with our commemoration of the 60th anniversary of the election of Alben Barkley as Vice President of the United States. With me today is someone who knew Vice President Barkley more as a famous politician. She knew him as her grandfather. She is Dottie Barkley Holloway. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here.
How old were you when Vice President, actually Senator Barkley at the time, died?
I was 13.
So you remember him well.
Oh, I do indeed. I remember so many things.
Well, you just start talking because the purpose of this program is for the guests to talk, not the old fat guy who does the interviewing. So just, if you would, just 13 years old. So you obviously that's quite a long time.
Well, I remember way before I was 13. I remember at Angles, at my grandfather's home, our discussions and our meals at the table at Angles. We had more fun. We had country ham and pear preserves, and I remember what he liked to eat. And
what did he like to eat?
Well, country ham. Boy, he loved it. Cornbread, sorghum molasses. He was a big sorghum man. Pear preserves were his favorite, although they're kind of seedy. I never knew why he liked them so much, but he did. And I remember going into the kitchen and seeing this ham soaking in a big copper pot kettle or whatever, and it had all kinds of briny looking stuff on it. It looked horrible, but by George, it was the best stuff you ever put in your mouth. You got a good biscuit with that, you could not beat it. You could not beat it. He liked chess pie. That was one of his favorites. So,
did you get to visit in Washington with him much?
I did. Yes, I did. I got to go up for the inauguration. There's a nice picture of my brother Alben and I studiously working at his desk, I think. I don't know what we were writing. But I got to go down beneath the Senate and ride in the little train underneath. I got to watch Granddaddy get have his beard shaved and have his hair cut and get his shoes shined. And things like that stand out to me so vividly. I don't know why they've stayed with me so long, but they have.
You know, in looking back on the history of his life, he really was a sort of, I wouldn't say rags to riches, but certainly rags to great political prominence. Born in a log cabin, really was, in Graves County. And
yes.
I'm a native of Graves County, so we like to claim him too.
Well, you should. Well,
you
should.
Wheel, Kentucky. And then his parents were sharecroppers, and goes on. It's an amazing career. You did bring a copy of one of my favorite books. That reminds me. Barkley was a master storyteller, as a lot of these old politicians were. Yes. What are some of the, did he share political stories, the funny political stories that you remember?
He did. He was a teaser. He would always tease me and try to trick me about one thing or another. He had that sort of sense of humor. Once I was going to, I think, New York, and we traveled on a Pullman train together. And of course, you have your little berth in there. There's one on top and one on the bottom. And I was about 6, 7 years old. And so I was going to stay in there with Granddaddy. And he did not want to be on the upper berth, but he tricked me. He told me that he wanted the upper berth. Dottie Ann, you have to take the lower berth. So of course I didn't like that at all. And he got what he really
Reverse
wanted.
psychology.
Yeah.
Right.
It was great. It was fun. And then we went to dinner on the train. I still remember that. All kinds of flowers and white tablecloths. I was a lucky little girl to have been able to do those things and remember it.
During the inauguration, '49, do you recall going to the ceremony, what that was like?
I really don't have such a strong memory of that. I remember going to Mount Vernon while I was up there. I remember going with my brother, and Alben fell down and popped his head open and had to have some stitches. So that's a funny thing, but that stood out in my mind pretty vividly. And I remember, again, the trains beneath the Senate, that sort of thing. But I was a pretty, it's funny, just certain things stay with you.
Well, when you were growing up, I mean, were you aware of the fact that your grandfather was a very, very famous person? Like when you were growing up, you grew up in Paducah.
Yes.
Your friends, it's like, wow, you know, my grandfather was a union carpenter and painter. Your grandfather was Vice President of the United States. That's...
Well, you know, I don't think I realized that for quite a long time. I mean, it was just the way things were, and I never questioned it. And I was very proud of him. I remember going to grade school and then going on up and feeling a little self-conscious about it, and wanted to be well liked, and didn't want anybody to think thought that I was, you know, better than anybody else. And so I remember working hard at trying to do that. And but he was just fun. He just put that hat on, and we'd go out and see the ponies and walk around, and I just enjoyed him. I felt comfortable and safe
There's
with him.
a terrific picture that I believe Bill Powell took of Barkley leaning over a
Yes.
fence.
Yeah.
That's at Angles. It's a tremendous
Yeah,
picture.
it is.
The other picture that I remember seeing, and this actually was in the office of Ed Paxton, who was he was the Democratic Paxton, actually.
Yes, he was.
And it was of Barkley at Angles holding a newspaper, the Chicago Tribune, Dewey defeats Truman. And of course, Truman, the famous where he's holding it up
Right.
like that, grinning. But there's actually one, and Barkley's at the breakfast table. You can see some toast here, and so, and he's holding this same newspaper up. A really interesting story.
That's wonderful.
That, of course, that election is so historic because all the polls said that he and Truman were going down to an absolute total defeat. Did he ever talk to you about, and I know I talked to your dad once,
Yeah.
and he said that all along that both Barkley and Truman thought they were going to win when no one else did, and they were serious. They weren't just saying this to pep up the supporters. They really believed it. Did he ever talk about that or share with you why he thought they were going to win?
I can't tell you so much that, no, but I recall the night listening to the radio when that was going on, and my dad and my mother, everybody huddled around the radio listening to everything, you know, all the returns coming in, and but my dad always said he knew he was going to win. He never had any doubt at all, and he was a wise politician. He knew the way things went, and he never had a doubt. He never had a doubt.
Again, historic elections. We just witnessed a very historic election.
We did.
The first African American elected president. What do you think the Veep would have thought about the election of Barack Obama as the President of the United States?
Oh my gosh, my grandfather would have been so proud. My grandfather was a liberal Democrat, and he would have been so proud. I wish that he could have been here to have taken all of this in. It's been such an amazing time. But my grandfather would have been exceptionally proud, and he would, it would have been such a nice thing had he been able to see it. Maybe he did. Maybe he peeped down, you think?
And you're right, he was. He was a New Dealer, an ardent New Dealer, very strong labor voting record. In fact, when there was talk about running him for president, he got a lot of strong labor support.
Yes, he did.
Was late in his career.
He was a labor man.
He was, all the way.
Yes.
Now, during the campaign for the United States Senate from Kentucky, your grandfather's name was invoked by Mitch McConnell in his ads, comparing himself to that, and frankly, your brother supported Mitch McConnell. And I know you love your brother. Brothers and sisters love one another. Your reaction to that?
I don't understand it. I don't understand it, and I guess everybody has a right to their own vote. So that's all.
But in your view, your grandfather would have voted for Bruce
Oh
Lunsford.
my gosh, yes. There's no question. I mean, my grandfather was a yellow dog Democrat. They call it blue dog nowadays, but
Right.
he was a yellow dog Democrat, and he was 100%.
One of his
for the
nicknames was
Democratic
Mr. Democrat, wasn't it?
It was Mr. Democrat, yeah. And he was, I mean, he was well loved, and he had very good friends in the Republican Party. He didn't have any problem with friendships and that sort of thing. But he walked that straight and narrow.
Yes, in fact, I saw an email from your cousin, Mr. Truitt, in
Steve.
Washington, Steve Truitt, and he said that one of the things he talked about in this email was that he thinks that Vice President Barkley would despair at the lack of civility in elections these days. That in his time, you could be friends with a Republican could be friends with a Democrat and not take this personal. And he really despaired at the lack of civility.
Yeah. Well, Steve was there in Washington with Granddaddy, so he saw probably more of him than I did. But, you know, and Steve, you know, of course, is the one who named him the Veep.
Now explain that story, right, the Veep.
I wish I'd done it, but it wasn't me.
But you're honest, you gave your cousin credit for it. So.
Absolutely. Steve said he was, the Honorable Vice President was too long. And so they were talking about that, and he decided that there would be a good way to shorten it. And so he said, why don't we call him the Veep? And Steve was probably 7, 8 years old, I don't know, and maybe a little older. But that caught on, you know. Granddaddy went out and told the press, and it caught on. And he is the Veep.
He is the Veep. He's
the
only
Veep.
He is. He is.
To most of us Kentuckians, he's the only one.
That's right. No, he really is. And there are other vice presidents, but that title belongs to him.
Yes, it does.
Well, in the course, of course, he rubbed shoulders with some of the greatest and most famous people around. Any stories about, of course, in 1944, he had the famous falling out with Franklin Roosevelt, but he still supported Roosevelt.
Oh, he certainly did. And they patched up their differences. I think that, you know, that if you read this book, that reminds me, which I wish every child could read at least the first couple of chapters, because it's like, my grandfather was like Huckleberry Finn, and you get the feeling for Graves County and you know, this whole area. It's just it's a great book. But yeah, I think that he managed to stay good friends with his and
Well, now, when you were going and toing and froing, did he introduce you to his other great political? I know Barkley was a big, Sam Rayburn and Barkley were big friends. Did you meet Sam Rayburn?
I met Sam Rayburn.
He was quite a character.
I loved Sam Rayburn. He was just wonderful. Now, he came to Angles after my grandfather's death. And I was about 13, and he was a little bitty, short, bald guy, but one of the sweetest people I've ever run into. And President Truman came to Angles as well. And
had you met him before?
I had, but I can't really tell you exactly what that was like. I remember meeting him, but it's hazy. And but I remember very well when he came to Angles, and he signed our guest register, a retired Missouri farmer, which I think is great.
Is that
and
right?
I've got the guest register.
A retired Missouri farmer.
That's very Trumanesque.
It is.
Isn't it?
I was going to say very self-deprecating, very Trumanesque. Do you remember some of the other luminaries who came?
Well, you know, I knew a lot of the Kentucky politicians. As I say, if you talk to Steve, he lived in Washington and probably, you know, knew more of the people than the famous people than I did.
Well, how often did your grandfather get back home?
He came back very often. He came back pretty regularly, and because he had farms here, and he came back to Angles because he so loved his home. He loved it. And he would come, and we would walk around the house and go look into the orchard. And he had cattle there at Angles, and there was a big red barn there. And we had a great time when he'd come home. As a matter of fact, Albin and I got to fly with him occasionally. And
I was going to ask you, the story I always heard was that when Truman would be flying home to Missouri, the presidential plane would stop in Paducah and let Barkley off, and then he'd pick him up going back.
Exactly, yeah. I think that's how it worked. But I remember being, you know, climbing aboard that train, and I had, of course, as a child, you have no fear. And the bumpier it was, the happier Albin and I were.
Of course.
We just loved it. So it was a great experience, you know, a great experience for me.
Yeah.
We got to be friends with the Secret Service men because they were fun and funny and enjoyed children. So there were just a couple of them.
Yeah, yeah. Where did he live in Washington?
3202 Connecticut Avenue, I believe.
Was
he
it
had
an
an
apartment?
It was a very large apartment, yeah.
Oh.
He and my grandmother were there, and my grandmother was very ill, and he took care of her until she died. But all the children came. Marion and Wally and my dad and everybody came to visit them at that.
Her name was Brower, wasn't it?
My grandmother was from Mayfield, and her name was her original name was Annie Burns Brower, and after she met my grandfather, she didn't like the name Annie. I love the name Annie, but she didn't like it, so she changed her name to Dorothy Ann Barkley, and so that was the name that she took, and I was named after her. So,
of course, late in life, he marries Jane Hadley.
Yes, he did.
I remember the St. Louis socialite, and here's this fellow from Kentucky marrying this hotsy totsy. Did you meet her?
I met her and her two glamorous daughters, and I think Jane and Granddaddy were very happy. I think they loved each other. No romance is perfect, but I think they were very happy.
How did they meet? Do you know?
They met at a party, and they had a song that was played by the orchestra at this party called Some Enchanted Evening.
Oh, yeah.
And that was their song. That was their favorite song. I've heard this time and time again. And I don't know exactly what party it was or whatever, but that was how they met. And then I was in their wedding when they got married. I was the flower girl or something. But I think they were very happy, and I know my grandfather was, he was beside himself. He was so excited. I think he gave her a convertible as a wedding present. So
wow.
And they went to Sea Island, Georgia, on their honeymoon. And but I was mostly entranced with the girls, Anne and Jane Hadley, and I wish that I knew where they were now. I'd love to talk to them again. They were
well. Now,
wonderful.
Was it on his honeymoon that he grew a mustache?
No, that was much earlier.
Well, what was the story of that? Because he suddenly shows up with a mustache, and the press is really jumping all over this. And
I know.
Do you know why he did it?
I don't. I really just think he wanted to try it on for size, and it didn't fit. So.
Yeah, because I knew he cut it off pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly. No, he looked very strange with that mustache.
Yeah.
He didn't look like himself at all.
Yeah. Did you ever, as a kid, accompany him on any of his campaigns? Did you ever campaign with him anywhere?
I would go with my father, and we would go down to on Broadway and see him. But my dad went with him a lot of places. And gosh, I wish my dad were here. He could tell you all sorts of stories. But I just know the things that he's told me, and the few things that I remember about Granddaddy.
Well, he was, and again, Barkley's a little ahead of my time, and I was a child, but he was a tremendous orator.
Oh gosh, he was.
Do you know did he practice that? I mean, how he just came natural.
It came natural to him, and he could get up there and tell a joke and be, fabulous. I love the way he used his humor, because he could work it right in, and it was perfect. But he was a wonderful orator.
This book, I have stolen many stories out of that book.
Good for you.
They're tremendous, and what is I really enjoy talking to older people who will tell me Barkley stories they heard him tell that aren't in that book. And did you ever hear the story about the sheriff and the preacher?
Lay it on me.
This was told to me. I love this story. It was told me by a woman in Clinton who said she heard Barkley tell the story. And the story goes like this. There was a sheriff in an unnamed Kentucky county, and he is out patrolling one day, and he sees a car swerving, very suspicious that the person behind the wheel is inebriated. And so he pulls the car over, goes over to the car, looks in the window, and he sees behind the wheel a minister of a certain church that absolutely forbids alcohol to touch the lips of the members. Well, the sheriff is taken aback by this, and he also notices next to the preacher a jug on the seat of the car. And he asked the preacher, he said, "Preacher, what's in that jug?" And the preacher, sort of slurred speech, said, "Water." And the sheriff said, "Well, do you mind if I take a look?" Well, of course, what's the preacher going to do? He hands him the jug. The sheriff uncorks the jug, and it's whiskey. And he says, "Preacher, there's whiskey in that jug." And the preacher says, "Praise Jesus, he's done it again." I love that story. And I can just hear Barkley tell it. It just is the funniest thing I've ever heard. And I can just hear him tell that story. And I'm so indebted to that woman, I forgot her name. But these stories that I hear,
they're great.
They were master at it. And a number of years ago, I had Governor Carroll on my program. And of course, Governor Carroll's a big fan of Barkley, as Wendell Ford was too.
Oh, I loved Wendell Ford.
And so I asked Governor Carroll, I said, "Why are the great stump orators gone?" And he said, "Television." Yeah. Now, it took me 3 minutes to tell that story.
Yeah.
And so I wonder how these great orators like your dad,
yeah.
and gosh, there was your dad, John Sherman Cooper, going all the way back, A.O. Stanley, Ed Morrow, how would they have dealt with television? How would your grandmother have dealt with television?
I'm sure he would have dealt, but it would have been difficult because his stories were long and his speeches were long. I've got a quick story for you.
Please.
My friend Jack McKinney told me this. He swears that his mother told him this story. It's not a joke. This is what really happened. My grandfather, as a little boy, came across this cat, and the cat had died. And so my grandfather went to get all the children in the neighborhood and conducted a funeral for the cat, which I think is great. It's something that my grandfather would have done. Oh, yeah. Maybe that's where he began his oratory.
Oh yes, the elegy for a cat. How funny! I can just see that. And I wonder too, you know, when he was a kid, did he give speeches to other kids? I mean, exactly.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
They said his nickname was Monk. I'm not sure why they
I've
called
heard
him
that too.
Monk,
I've heard that too. Yeah.
That was his nickname.
Another story that I love is when he went to Marvin College. He was a janitor, and there was a sign out front that said "Barkley swept here."
I know, that's a great story.
I mean, and that is just
and listen, he did sweep there, and he worked hard. He had to put himself through college, and he was proud of the time that he spent in college. He went to Emory after Marvin College.
Yeah. I'd read that in that book. It's
and I've got a picture of him somewhere, and he won a medal for oratory from Marvin College, and it's in one of these things that I brought along with me.
Yeah.
But he was, I tell you what, he was something. He liked it, and it would have been hard for him to adapt to television. But if you look back, you know, I think there are people who've managed. Bill Clinton kind of managed his way around television and managed to still. You had a feeling that he could get his little tales told and stick them in there. You know, which I thought was terrific.
But again, I mean, Barkley is a throwback, and that was a real art in Kentucky, oratory.
Right.
And it would be wonderful to have heard Henry Clay
or
some of these people who could just charm the birds out of the trees.
Right.
And what intrigues me is these fellows could speak for a couple of hours and keep an audience in thrall, whereas today, 4 or 5 minutes probably be the end of that stuff.
I've got a tape when he was on Edward R. Murrow. I've got, you know, there are lots of things laying around that need to be preserved that I'm not quite sure what to do.
Well, so he was on the Murrow TV show?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And that may be, some of those things may be at the University of Kentucky too. So there are interesting things that.
Did you? Well, of course, Murrow was a great journalist. Did you meet any of the journalists, reporters of the day?
No, I don't recall. I don't recall having met them. No.
Because he seemed to, I mean, Barkley got along with the press very well.
Oh, he did indeed. He was very open. He had a good time. Granddaddy had a wonderful time. He was a hard worker, but he had a great time. He really did.
Yeah. Well, I remember I was in Angles a few times when your dad had it, and it was just like a living museum.
It was. It was perfect.
Well, now when you were a kid and you're going in there, I mean, did you understand that this autographed book from Roosevelt or this desk was from the President of the Philippines and all that? It was just a desk and a book to you.
It was. I did not know when I was a little girl. I mean, there were things that I loved, like music boxes and fascinating things but I grew up with them. I lived there since I was 2 years old.
Now, from what I read, Barkley was quite a collector of things.
He and my grandmother were antique collectors, and they had a marvelous collection of antiques, just wonderful. And then my father, David Barkley, came along and continued to document everything. Everything that was there was well documented, and everything was in its place. I so much wish that that house could have been preserved for school children to go through and enjoy the way I enjoyed it. It would have
And
been
of course,
wonderful.
the house itself was historic even before he came
Oh, it
along.
is Quintus Quincy Quigley.
Don't you love that name?
I love that
Q
name.
Quigley. It's fantastic. And wasn't the story when Barclay was a young man, he would go by the house in a buggy and say,
Oh,
one
he
day I'll
would.
have that house.
He and my grandmother, it was a gravel road then, what is now Alvin Barkley Drive, or the Blandville Road as I knew it. And they would go by and wish that they could have it. It was originally a summer home. Now Dr. and Mrs. Quinn own the home, and they have done a beautiful job with it. They've made it absolutely, lovely. I've never been inside, but from the outside they've done just a magnificent job, and I'm very, very grateful to them. For
You know, one of the
having
things you were
done
talking about documented with those scrapbooks,
Yeah.
and what's interesting about them is a lot of people, when they cut things out, don't date them.
it. Right, my
They're
dad,
dated.
Yes, my dad was
And
meticulous
it's,
about
it's,
that.
It's the newspapers, the Courier Journal, August 11th, 1947, whereas mostly would just be a clipping in there, and
Yeah.
you'd have to wonder, where did this come from? It's marvelous.
Yeah.
And we talked earlier about your grandfather's papers. You do have some of them.
I have some of them. UK has a great many of them. I guess my brother has some of them as well. But I would like to find a good home for what I have at any rate. Also, I live in this great big Victorian house and have a lot of large pieces of furniture, and my children can't use them. Their houses aren't the right size, so I wish I could find a home for those too. So, we'll just...
And that was some of Alvin Barkley's furniture.
Oh yeah, my granddaddy and my grandmother, absolutely, yeah. Most of it, as a matter of fact.
Well, as I said, going in that house, it was like a living museum.
Oh, it was great,
and
wasn't it?
your dad showed me this book, and it was, autographed by Franklin
Yeah.
Roosevelt and autographed by these world leaders.
Oh yeah,
It was
fabulous.
it's an astonishing house, and I'm like you. I wish it could have been preserved as a state
Well,
shrine.
it's too bad.
It,
My father was a wonderful man, and he was quite the historian. He wrote a series of short vignettes or short stories about Granddaddy, and he does one about my great-grandmother, Alexa Eliza. It's a wonderful story about Alexa Eliza in the church in Washington. He and Granddaddy and Alexa Eliza were there, and every time the preacher, who was a very, staunch sort of a minister, every time he'd say something that she agreed with, she'd say, "Amen."
and I'll bet. Oh yeah.
And my father
Yeah.
said, "I'm embarrassed to say that I was so embarrassed." And he said, "Now I would have just been," but he said, Granddaddy got the biggest kick
I'll
out
bet he
of
did.
it. He just
bet he did,
loved
so.
it. And there's another little story about my
Tell it very quick because we're almost out of time.
Okay, well, we'll save it for
We'll
another
save it for next time.
We'll save
That's
it
the
for
only thing I
another
don't like
time.
about television is we can't go on and on like
Well,
this.
we had
But when
a
he
nice
starts
long
doing his
time.
finger like this, that means hurry it up or we're going to cut you off.
It
So.
went quickly.
We're out of time. I'm Barry Craig. My guest today was Dottie Barkley Holloway. Please join us next time.